Hello, Cadre 3, or geez, Cadre 2. This is the video number 10. It's the second one in the group that for May 18th class session. And this one has to do with a public policy doctrine. This is something that I think is just a fundamental understanding of the legal framework or foundation around policy, whether it be state statute, whether it be state rules and regulations, whether it be local policy, that sometimes people, one, don't get, two, don't understand, and three, have probably never heard of. But it is the foundation that once you understand it and you're sitting there watching TV and you hear about something they're doing at the state level or something they're doing in Washington, that if you have an understanding of public policy doctrine, you go, okay, I get this. I know where this is coming from. And sometimes even the authors of those policies or people that are advancing them don't get it either, because it's one of those things that just kind of is part of who we are as a society, where we've come from, and they're often unarticulated, but in some cases they're very clearly articulated, and I'll try to mention a few of those. Well, let me just read you the definition from a piece that I have that I think explains this fairly well, at least I hope it does. Public policy doctrine concerns a body of principles that underpin the operation of legal systems in the state. Legal systems could be statutes, could be state policy, could be local policy as well as things that are decided in the courts. And this addresses the social, moral, and economic values that tie a society together. Values that vary in different cultures and change over time. Law regulates behavior either to reinforce existing social expectations or encourages constructive change. And laws are most likely to be effective when they are consistent with the most generally accepted societal norms and reflect the collective morality of society. Now, what all that basically means is that when you look at policy from the standpoint of either being critical of it or advancing it and so on, usually it tends to have some underpinnings under it that somebody sees this as a way to hold society together. Some people see it as a way to create change that wouldn't otherwise occur. Some see it as reinforcing a set of critical values to them, and some see it as basically respecting different values at different times, and of course we've seen lots of that in the recent decade right here in Nebraska and right here at home. Examples for those that want to see the schools reformed by virtue of statutes, see that the opportunity to do that through policy such as state statutes or federal statutes as the way to basically embrace a set of values that fit people who, say, want to advance vouchers or charter schools and so on. You see different things in various debates that center around moral issues or ethical issues, and we'll talk about a couple of those in a minute. The critical values of any legal system or policy system include things like impartiality, neutrality, certainty, equality, openness, flexibility, and growth. And so when disputes happen about laws or about policies in some way, usually it's around one of those issues of was it impartial or was it not? Was it neutral or did it favor some particular group? Was it certain or uncertain? Equality versus not, those kind of things. And I think you get the idea of that. Well, there are some fundamental principles in the public policy doctrine that I think are important, and I'm not going to go through all of them because there's a virtual unending list of these, but 3 or 4 that keep coming to our attention and actually coming finding us flat in front of our face on many of the issues that are being dealt with today. One of those fundamental principles is that ignorance of the law is no excuse. So just because you say, I didn't know, whether it be a traffic ticket, you didn't know the speed limit, or whether you created some heinous, violent crime and claim that you didn't know that was illegal or whatever. In other words, ignorance is never an excuse for violation of the law. And you see people trying to push that when they operate from a code is don't ask for permission, go ahead and do it, and ask for in other words, ask for forgiveness kind of later. But if that touches a legal issue, ignorance of that law or claiming ignorance or trying to propose ignorance of the law is simply no excuse for not abiding by it. The second one is the sanctity of life. You see this rearing its head all kinds of places, whether it be on issues of abortion or women's rights, whether it's on death penalty kinds of issues, death penalty using injection, death penalty using the electric chair, death penalty hanging, whatever it might happen to be. You see that issue of the sanctity of life raising itself, and kind of the two sides of it are that if you've taken a life, someone should take yours, but on the other hand, whether you've taken a life or not, retribution by taking that person's life doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and that's that sanctity of life kind of principle. One of the other issues relate to the fundamental principles of public policy doctrine have to do with parent-child relationship, and that it has always been within the authority of law for a state, or even in some cases the federal government, to default to children if they feel that it protects the interests of the child. In other words, the state or the federal government can actually violate the parent rights and actually take them away, making the state or the federal agency of some kind the guardian of a child. And we've seen that, and many of you have seen that in your schools in special ed cases where the parents either couldn't or wouldn't or didn't provide for those the needs of that child. A fourth one has to do with marriage. The sanctity of marriage is the English term for it. I can't even pronounce the Latin term for it. But it has to do with requiring that marriage is entered with a genuine commitment should be held valid unless there's some good reason to the contrary. And you see that all over when divorce proceedings in some states can happen in 24 hours. Others require a 6-month waiting and counseling and all kinds of things. And you see this appearing as an underpinning in issues related to same-sex marriages. And does that commitment of family and contract law mean the same thing in a same-sex or same-gender union? What about the difference between civil unions and actual marriages? Does that impact that? Well, basically what those are the main ones that we encounter a lot, but one of the ones that I just want to mention that you see just to illustrate the point of the public policy doctrine is that for the most part we don't American legal system does not honor the legal system of another country. That the public laws in France have really nothing to do with regulating the behavior of an American, even when an American is in France. Now that may seem a little strange to you, but when you look at some of the court cases that have involved Americans who've gotten in trouble in another country, one of the primary arguments is that that person should be tried in America as if that crime was happened on American soil, because it's American laws to which that person is subjected. They are not a citizen of France. And I can't think of the girl's name who's been accused of murder of her roommate. And the legal team is arguing that we'll try that person, but we'll try them in an American court, and we'll assume that if this in fact happened, it happened on American soil. Well, of course, the French are not buying that. They don't think that's appropriate. If you're on French soil, you're going to abide by French laws. I think it's probably a wise thing for those of you who may be contemplating travel to a foreign country or to a place like Oklahoma. Sorry about that, Jim. I couldn't help myself. That you abide by the laws wherever you are. Just because I'm from Nebraska doesn't mean I can do something that is permitted by the laws of Nebraska if I go to another state as well as another country. But if I do in fact get in trouble, that's what extraditions are all about. That's what trying to get people in foreign courts to be subjected to the laws in the United States as opposed to the ones in the country, province, state, region that they violate. Well, those are the principles of the concept of public policy doctrine, and I think it's important not because you can articulate those things, but it helps you to understand how you see a policy, why you see it the way you do, because those things operate kind of unspoken underneath both those that support them, support these kinds of policies, or those that challenge them for a variety of reasons. That concludes this video, and there's one more, number, I think, 11.